Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about there was a slight hiccup at the beginning of this. Are you hearing me? Yes, it does seem like you are. Oh no, I think it. Oh yes, no, that's all right. Sorry, thought there was another technical hitch. It's all been a bit hectic here, and I've just run from the other side of Worthing, so that's not so good. Bloody keys are in the way. Right, the screen isn't looking too good. Hello to TurboStream. Now, I'm going to cut this just to half an hour because I've got Mr. Suggett coming at 5. He's going to actually let himself in, and if I'm lucky, he might even make me a cup of coffee. So apologies for that. It's all been a bit hectic today. I've also filmed some horses going to the abattoir, so there was a few emotions earlier this morning to deal with. But anyway, here we are. So we will crack straight on with The Lure of Sussex by whatever the chap's name, Thurston Hopkins. And we'll get straight into it. And yes, I apologise. I haven't put up the podcast version of this yesterday. I said I'd get on top of it and I completely forgot, which was very silly of me. I'm just checking that everything seems all right. Good. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. Hang on, I just need to change that from top chat to live chat. Doesn't seem to make any difference. They're Dexter cows rather than horses. Yes. Did I say horses? I've no idea what I'm talking about. This is a chapter called Hickstead and Bolney. Today, I'm walking alone. My walking partner has been suddenly called back to London. Early in the morning, I leave the Sportsman Inn on the Cookfield Road and take the footpath leading to Dumbrell's Farm and Hickstead Place. Long before the Great World War, I'd spent some days tramping in this locality. To revisit a district is like trying to redream a dream. You are aware, of course, that you're not quite the same fellow and that the environment must also have changed. Yet the identities are more profound than the differences. And the moment you get into the swinging stride over some familiar footpath, you have an odd illusion of timelessness. Those grey hairs do not seem so conspicuous. The tinge of stiffness in the legs does not shout so distressingly of lost youth. For a day, this mortal has put on immortality. Some 50 miles away, your wife is saying firmly, "No, he cannot be reached by phone. He is wandering somewhere in the wilds of Sussex. There's no way of finding him now." For the time being, you've become a myth, unaffected by time and chance. A lonely tramp gives one strange flashes of self-knowledge too. Nothing like a lonely tramp for taking the nonsense out of one. Companionship on a walking tour is essential if one is to keep in good spirits, but a solitary jaunt teaches you many things about that rather bumptious fellow under your hat. Here you are the same man who walked the path 20 years ago, with the same negligible stock of virtues, but of a surety with the same battalion of faults. So you imagine that you are a paragon, unsullied with impatience, envy, spite, curvaceousness, surely, and conceit. Take a solitary walk, my brother. The day of judgment will not betray you more brutally than your own company. However, I digress. We will get back to the footpaths. To the north of Dumbrell's Farm is a small stream called the Pook Bourne, a relic of centuries so remote that the careless eye sees not in the name the true genius loci of Sussex, Puck, the spirit of all antiquity. We press on over the trackway, passing a little to the north of Pookbourne Barn, and arrive in the village of Hickstead. Through the courtesy of Miss Blanche Davison, the owner of Hickstead Place and a direct descendant of Hickstead Stapleys, I was permitted to look over the old family residence. Reached by a flagged path of wavy-faced stones over a great still lawn, you find an ancient house of lichened and weather-worn stone and brick. The slim brick chimneys seem to date from the days of Henry VIII, but the house must be much older. The owner informed me that up to the present one, no one has been able to trace the date of the erection of Hickstead Place. It is a tempting subject for speculative investigation. The red brickwork may date from about 1450. Let's have a slurp of drink. However, until the reign of Henry VIII, very little brickwork was executed in England. In this reign, however, it arrived at great perfection. Many buildings of this date exhibit some of the finest known specimens of ornamental brickwork and terracotta. It was chiefly used in civic and domestic buildings, but seldom found in ecclesiastical work. Hurstmonceux Castle is a very early example, being erected in the reign of Henry VI. Tattershall Castle, Lollard's Tower, Lambeth, Layer Marney Towers in Essex, Hengrave Hall, and the old part of Hampton Court may also be mentioned. The Stapley family must have been established here at about 1600, and the house was then an ancient one. The cradle of the Hickstead Stapleys, a curious... The cradle of the Hickstead Stapleys, a curious carved oak cot, dates from the time of Henry VII, and the carving on it is similar to the work on the panelling in several of the rooms. It is possible that the house was erected about 1485 to 1509. This is, of course, a suggestion only, and is offered with the greatest reserve. In its essential appearance, the house is squat, with a roof held with Horsham slabs. Internally, it contains many points of exceptional interest. Indeed, it has much more genuine appeal to the lover of antiquity than many of the larger and better-known manor houses. The dining hall and the drawing room are both miracles of age-polished, dusky panels, and when the red light of a log fire pours itself on the carvings, lions and other herald creatures take colour and motion. The arms of Henry VIII, alternating with those of the Earls of Delaware, occur several times in the oak carvings. As I've mentioned, the Stapley cradle stands in the entrance hall, and here also may be seen a very fine chair of the days of the Cavaliers, and several of the old Stapley guns and pistols. The panelling on the dining room was much enriched by Mr. John Wood, who was a skilful carver in wood himself. Mr. John Wood was the grandfather of the present owner of Hickstead Place, and a descendant of the Stapley family. It will thus be seen that the house has been in uninterrupted possession of the same family for well over 300 years. It was probably in this room on Christmas Eve in 1634 that the great Hickstead bottle was produced to elaborate ceremony. I find an entry in the account books which reads, 20th December, then filled the great bottle with beer. This bottle was one of the portly leathern blackjacks, which were always a conspicuous object in all Sussex manor houses in the 17th century. The Hickstead bottle would have been a capacious one, standing table high and holding many gallons. There is a gusto about this very beautiful room, a ripeness of memory, as if the very table recalled the flagons, beakers, and goblets of the good companionship which had rattled and clanked through many generations of jovial housekeepers. On the stairway walls, a curious black and white tempera painting on canvas displays hunting scenes. A very quaint and interesting piece of work, well over 100 years old. Upstairs, a great oak bedstead has the arms of Delaware carved into its headpiece. Two massive doorway frames attract attention in one of the bedroom corridors. They are both of heavy oak, sunk deep into the thickness of the wall. They are far too solid for the present doors, which lead into small bedrooms. It is possible that they have once formed entrances approached by oak steps for the servants, the rooms being added later. But the greatest interest attaches to the old building, standing a little forward at the west corner of Hickstead Place. It is locally known as the Castle, and though it was very close to the house, it seems impossible for it to have been formed a connected part of the family residence in the past. It consists of two large rooms, one above the other, with separate entrances. The upper chamber is reached by exterior stone steps, and there is a very fine oak doorway which leads to a stairway made of solid beams of large scantlings of great antiquity. The roof is of red tile, and the walls are of long Tudor bricks with stone quoins. The two ridges of the roof are ornamented with stepped gables, and the rear of the building is strengthened by two strongly constructed buttresses. It may have formed the chapel of the house, but this seems doubtful, for the structure of the building does not show any specific indications. Many crosses formed of stone and dark-coloured bricks decorate the external walls, but they seem to be more of a haphazard whim of the builder than a serious attempt at ecclesiastical symbolism. It seems probable that it was a small military post built in the time of Henry VIII, when threats of invasion were incessant, and the king was building castles and making guns in every part of the southern and eastern coasts. Several wedge-shaped windows in the brickwork appear to me to be of military origin. The castle at Hickstead is said to have been a place of confinement in which prisoners were slowly starved to death. If they tell you this in the Castle Inn, you must not smile. The evidence may be vague and devoid of documents, but while you tarry at Hickstead, it must be indubitable. By the way, the old Mother Shipton seized upon the name of an ancient village of Twynham in one of her prophecies, or was it Old Moor? Anyway, the prophecy said that at the end of the world, the first people to awake from the dead would be the good folk of Twynham. This strikes me as very poor prophecy. Sheer inertia will keep the living inhabitants of Twynham from making a move until half the dead of the world have been mobilised. To startle the village would constitute a miracle, and I am certain that the Oaks and the people of Twynham will go on thriving long after the rest of this sad old world has disappeared. The people of Hickstead have a dialect as rich as a vintage of Napoleon cognac. They are a kindly folk. One cottager made me tea and steadfastly refused payment. Everywhere I met with courtesy. They have a great impatience of the smart man from town who comes into their domain to ginger things up. They have honourable sturdiness, which resents interference. Another slurp of drink. Oh, I needed that. I charged here earlier. I heard a good story of a young Doctor Who. I misread that on purpose. It wasn't Doctor Who. I heard a good story of a young doctor who came into Sussex labourer's cottage to shelter from rain. The labourer was smoking a very foul pipe of extremely pungent tobacco. The fumes became so penetrating that the doctor could not endure them any longer. "My good fellow," he said, "I am a doctor from London with 10 years' experience, and I can assure you that in my opinion every case of cancer of the throat that I have treated has been caused by smoking rank tobacco." The labourer went on puffing his pipe for a moment, and then slowly and dispassionately drawled, "Well, I am a Sussex chap from nowhere in particular, and I think I ought to tell you that in my opinion, most in general, every black eye I ever happened on is caused by folks interfering with other people's business." Probably true. The rich, loamy wisdom of the Sussex man should perhaps be treasured by every stranger who tramps through Sussex. I do not refer to the motor bus routes of Sussex, where the real old type of Sussexian is seldom met. I refer to the isolated retreats, which can only be reached by footpaths, or at best by narrow byroads. The Hicksted lands, at the time that they were held by the Stapleys, were noted for fine timber. Even today, the map maker of the Ordnance Survey Office typographically calls attention to noble oaks and elms by Hicksted Bridge. The stratum running through the estate is known as oak tree clay, and in the 17th century the woods and hedgerows were allowed to grow thick and overhanging, a method that would now be looked upon as bad for the timber and bad for the land. On the other hand, the old-fashioned squire set great score by his underwood and timber. He lived well within an income of about £500 a year, and by his sale of faggots, tan, ash tallows, and oak trees, a sum of £300 a year was secured on a well-wooded property. When money was suddenly required for any enterprise, a special felling of oaks provided it, and if no money was required, the oaks would not be eating their heads off. On the contrary, the timber was growing into profit as long as it was untouched. If only that was the situation now. In 1732, Anthony, Antone? I don't know how you pronounce this. It's Anthone, Anthone, anyway, whatever. Anthone Stapley sold 848 cords of wood at 16 shillings a cord, and 275 oaks for £132 and 2 shillings in 1735, and he received £330 for 562 oaks, all from the Hicksted estate. These items were selected from an account book which shows very extensive sales of wood of every description. Just at the end of Hicksted Lane, near Twynham, is Slipe Farm. It's a curious name, and I find it in the diary of a member of the Stapley family, and a note dated 1727, which tells of an excise of an old manorial privilege on the property. It reads this: "I seized 2 oxen in the Slipe field upon the death of James Wood for 2 heriots. One was a black and the other a red one, and both had white foreheads. But John Wood, the son, came to me the next day and showed me the purchase deed, which stated it be a joint purchase by him and his father, so that there were no aids due until they were both dead. Men then was lost labour. I had much trouble and no profit." After leaving Hicksted Place, the reader must follow me over half a mile of motor-crazed road. I apologise, but that cannot be avoided. Now, I think I've just heard Mr. Suggett enter. Have you entered, Mr. Suggett?
I have entered.
A nice cup of coffee would be very much appreciated.
I'll put the kettle on.
Top man, he's putting the kettle on, so there we are. He can even wave at you. How are we doing? We'll finish just after 5 as usual, so there we are. Anyway, yes, we've had to go by motor car, it seems. We soon passed the Castle Hotel, a picturesque coaching inn with its stables and barns arranged in a hollow square and its bedrooms overlooking the yard. A fine Tudor timbered barn stands at the entrance to the stables. Passing over Rice Bridge, the old toll house is reached, and a few hundred yards further on the left, the track leads to the mill ponds of Bolney Watermill. The mill is still used for grinding oats and chicken food, and the present iron wheel was made by Medhurst and Son of Lewis in 1861. The interior machinery is also modern, but the bed beams of the water shaft are of large scantling and very old. The track continues from the mill to Garston's farm, a beautiful old house which is worth a day's march to behold. A bailiff took me into the stone-flagged kitchen, where the subtle scent of old woodwork mingled with the fine dust of centuries, and oppressed me with the sense of the many lives which must have once lived there. I once met a man who held the theory that the shadow of human beings always remained on the walls. He showed how, after a breath passes over a piece of glass or metal, its spectral outline did not fade away for many months after the solid substance had been removed. I often wonder if the actions of the past inhabitations of old houses linger on in that way. Garston's possesses a fine old oak staircase with fat, dumpy bolsters, what do you call a rail? Balusters, but the, what do you call them? I can't get the word. The balusters. That's the word. The dumpy balusters, and the rooms are all timbered with massive beams. The roofs are a mixture of tile and Horsham slabs, and the ground floor the ground floor passages are paved with large slabs of rippled marked stone. The granary and the barton, built of oak timber and Tudor bricks and entered by an external stairwell, is full of interest to those interested in domestic architecture. The oak doorway is possibly of the time of Henry VIII. From this point there is a beautiful view, the Wolstonbury beacon and the Chantonbury Lording in the distance. And Chantonbury, Lording it in the distance, yes. A footpath took me to Garston's over the fields to Bolney. As I walked up the steep village street, I turned to get a twilight glimpse of the south country, dim blue with the evening mists and the mists of years, and received a little stab in the heart, which the sight of it always gives me. The strange thing about the influence of the Downs over me is that they not only do they bestow a feeling of peace and leisure, but an indescribable consciousness of friendly contact. He who experiences this emotion has taken the immortal wound. He has received the Sussex barb and owned to the Sussex Toskin. He can never again break away from the spell of the Downs. And that's the end of that chapter. The next chapter is A Pilgrimage to Hayward's Heath. So I'm not quite sure if anybody who knows the terrain, this terrain doesn't seem to be one continuous journey, plus the fact there's no map in here. They seem to be just wherever he's starts the chapter, which is a bit of a shame, because I thought he was going to tramp all over from pillar to post and pillar to post, but he doesn't seem to do that. So a pilgrimage to Hayward's Heath, but he could well be doing that from Bolney, because Bolney's just a stone's throw from Hayward's Heath. So we will see. Let's just have a quick look at the comments before we disembark, which we will do today. I'm sorry to say that. Audrey Forbes, hello, afternoon. Just finished listening to Rebecca Mandalay, Still Burnt Down. Oh, yes. That's a good book. Daphne de Maurier, isn't it, Rebecca? Interesting book. I hated the housekeeper. I wanted to throttle her and drown her when I read that. Lots of good afternoons. Archie Jenner, hello, Archie. Dan Ludlow, nice to see you. Edward Moulding, lovely Julia, of course. Ben Ludlow, Linda Kane, Turbo Stream, I think we mentioned. John F., the Veg Grower podcast says the kettle is on. I heard it. And did you bring fish and chips then, says Turbo? No. Balustrade. Yes, actually, that's not how he spelt it in here. I don't know what he was. That was what I thought it was, balustrade. But here... Oh, balusters. 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 Dumpy baluster. I don't know what a baluster is. The name rings a bell, but I couldn't bring it to mind, which is why I thought balustrade will do. Or balustrade. Is it balustrade or balustrade? Anyway, thanks for the lovely reading. Much appreciated. How's that coffee? Do you know, he's in the other room listening to me. How's the coffee, Mr. Saggett? There'll be a slight pause and we'll hear him. Must be a few seconds delay. Why not? Come and say hello. Mr. Suggett's coming in. He's coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourself. This has not happened on one of our readings, but why not? He's rung up a few times, so we're quite familiar with Mr. Suggett. Here he comes.
That's hot.
Is it? Sorry, there's not another chair. You'll have to squat for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, look. Sit there for a second.
No, that's right. You sit down.
Here he is. He's the one and only Mr. Suggett. Look.
Oh, I had the work badge.
He's hiding his work badge because he doesn't want you to know that he's been slaving away. And he's listening on the thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for the coffee.
You're welcome.
You got in all right then?
Got in all right, yeah. The door was wide open.
Oh, yeah, wide open.
Everything's been stolen.
Oh, fantastic, yeah. So we've just been reading a book about Sussex, The Lure of Sussex. I don't know how well it's being received because we're only really on chapter 2. Wherefore art thou, Richard, says Ulfwald. Yes, you've been gallivanting over Sussex a bit.
Yeah, I'm a bit more local this week, just mostly in Brighton, although Eastbourne earlier today. But yeah, I'm always here, there and everywhere.
Difficult for such a man of small stature.
Yeah.
Look at him. He is the perfect size for fixing fridges, aren't you? You can get.
No, I'm too big for that, to be honest.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, anyway, wherefore art thou? Good to see you. So tomorrow, what is tomorrow? Wednesday. Yes, I should be. I've got a locksmith coming to break into my father's house. Talking about breaking in, I should be back by 4 o'clock though. They're coming between 12 and 3. So normal service will be resumed. Sorry about today's last minute panic. But couldn't be helped. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you did it. What do you think about the cycle lanes? Yeah, that's a topic for the Vogue show. I hate them, but I'm not cycling, so I guess cyclists like them. But where they've put them in Worthing have been an absolute nightmare. But they're everywhere. You've been
Brighton, Bognor, Chichester. They're everywhere. Horsham. And they're causing more traffic, especially today.
Yeah, you can well believe it. Very well, going great. Great, good stuff. Well, we'll leave it there. I don't want to encroach on Mr. Suggett's time or your time talking nonsense. We do that on the Vogue show. Anyway, back again tomorrow and we'll read a bit more, see how it goes. So thanks for watching. But from Richard and Richard, arrivederci, bye-bye.